Welcome to the second edition of Poorna Literature Festival. And today we have with us a very interesting person. Her name is Khyrunnisa A, the prize-winning author of children's fiction. Occasionally she writes for adults too, and all her books are bestsellers. She's a phenomenal writer, creating a character like Butterfingers, who has been a part of our life for more than 20 years. In different ways, he is actually a part of our lives. He's almost like a neighborhood boy who is doing mischiefs, pranks, yet an adorable kid. And ever since in 2010, her first Butterfinger series came, people have been looking forward for all her books. And she has also written 2 books for adults. One is a very famous and also a best-selling work, Tongue in Cheek, The Funny Side of Life, which has recently been translated to Malayalam. And also her humorous travelogue, Chuckle Merry Spin. And there is another new feather in her cap, and that is her book Smash It Butterfingers has been nominated for or shortlisted for the Bala Sahitya Puraskar organized by Sahitya Academy. Now, coming to children's literature in general, there's always a belief that writing for children is actually a easy task, and when compared to writing for adults, the audience is somebody who will never complain. There is a belief that they don't give feedbacks and all that. So what is your general opinion about children's literature, and what changes has taken place over the years in this field?
Yes, good evening everybody. It's nice to be here at the second Poorna Cultural Festival, and thank you all who came here after lunch. I know it's a very difficult time to stay awake, and I think Kaikasi and I will ensure that you sleep. Yeah. So thank you, Kaikasi. Yeah. And you asked me about children's literature and whether it is easy, this misconception about it being easy, and what are the changes? That's it's a kind of a sweeping question. But about children's literature being considered easy, well, a lot of people think that more than children's literature being considered easy to write, a lot of people say that it may be a little difficult to write, but it is always considered a notch below adult literature. Somehow, in literary circles, it is the poor cousin of adult literature. In fact, so many people ask me, oh, you're a children's writer? And they immediately assume I'm writing for very small children. And they will say, oh, I have a 1.5-year-old child, a 2-year child. And then I'll tell them, no, I'm writing for older children, 10 plus, and so on. But, so that is this. And when they know, then they will ask you, are you writing for adults or have you written for adults? So when I say, yes, I have written, I didn't write to prove any point. It just happened and I wrote. But when they know that I have written 2 letters, they'll say, oh, 2 books for adults. They'll say, okay, there is hope for her. So that is the situation. But it is difficult to write for children because it is, when you write for adults, you can write about anything. Of course, later you will be taken to task. You will be criticized. Lots of things can happen. But when you write for children, you're always conscious of the fact that you're writing for children. There are some invisible boundaries. There are some things you don't want to talk about. You should not talk about when you write for children. So you're always conscious of that. Then the kind of language you use, depending on the age that you are targeting, your target reader age. So all that is there. But if you look at children's literature, right from the beginning, when it started, children's literature, there wasn't anything like children's literature. It used to be whatever was, even when it came to storytelling, very long back, before actual literary works came into being, children were considered young adults, not in the way in which we are talking about young adults now, but they were considered the mini adult, and they were considered evil little adults. Very sad, because they were exposed to all kinds of things. They were living at a time when even living up to the age of 5 was considered great. That was the kind of lives they were leading. Deprivation, famine, wars, they were also pushed into that. So when stories were told for adults, nobody thought of segregating children and having separate stories for children, which are children friendly. They used to tell them everything. So the children also listened to all kinds of things. Afterwards, slowly, slowly, in the 17th century, we have a book written for children, but it was very moralistic. The Babe's book, little book, which was moralistic because, as the writer very nicely put it, books for children are to whip the little rascals into shape. it's always to teach them something, to moralize. And only later, after that, I think James Conway's book came, which was a fun book for children. But with Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, it just took off, and that was a golden age, late 19th century, early 20th century, and you could say now also it is a golden age for children's literature. So that is what's happening. And then you also asked me about the changes in children's literature. You incorporated 3-4 questions in one. Yeah, but the changes in literature.
That is basically because I've been listening to a very young child artist once speaking to an anchor that what do you think of us? This girl was said to be asking that we are not the kind generation of children who believes in unicorns and fairies and myths and all that. We talk about serious stuff, and this actually led to a debate, a very moralistic debate on do we have children now. So are they, like you said, they are young adults?
Yeah, they are young adults in a different way, because now with the advancement in technology, children are exposed to too much a little too early. So what has happened is from a play-based childhood, they have now gone to a phone-based childhood, which is gadget-related and so on. So what, if you look at the difference between how parents looked at children after that initial period I was talking about when children were little evil adults, after that children came to be recognized as children who need to be protected. So that was how it was. Books written for children came into being. But after that, children became a little, with technology, they became precocious. So children, the protected children, began to be overprotected, and children, I think it must be in the 1980s that this started, that parents would not allow children to go out and play. They felt the real world out there is dangerous. But they didn't realize that the more dangerous thing they were doing is to welcome them into this technical digital world, which is largely unsupervised. And that is how children became, I wouldn't even say precocious, because they are exposed to everything. They seem to know everything. They think they are very grown up. And that is the kind of children that are there. But what we must remember is that children are anyway, even if they have all this, they have grown up before their time, childhood stops at 3, you can say, but they know this unicorn and fantastic creatures thing, they still like them. See, children understand that that is a fictitious world, that is an imaginary world, that is a world that is specifically created. That is why they like supernatural stories, horror, all these fantastic creatures, magic, fantasy, all that they like, because they are in a real world where they are safe. So they use their imagination. Children are very smart. Children are very clever. They know that that's another world. And they just enter that world and enjoy that world. Their imagination is triggered, because it's so important that children read books. And then they come back to this real world, to the secure, comfortable world. Even the evil that you find in Grimm's fairy tales, nursery rhymes, all that is, children are primed now to understand that the world is not, the real world isn't that great. That there is a lot of evil, that there are uncomfortable situations in the world, but they know this is not happening to us. So they are exposed to a lot. But coming to now, what is happening is, writers feel children must get exposed to themes which earlier were considered uncomfortable, about gender problems, about single parenting, about all, those kind of situations, those kind of relationships, single mother, single gender parents, I mean, things which I really don't know whether it is right. I don't like to use the word right, which is all right. Whether it's all right for children to be exposed to this, because you see 3-year-old children having uh, picture books which deal with two single gender parents bringing up a child. Then about a child about divorce. So you have a story like sometimes mama, sometimes papa. You know, the child has to go from the mother's house to the father's house. So what people like, Samina, Mishra and others say is that they are into this education, child educationists. They say that children must understand that just as there is diversity and diverse experiences in the adult world, children must also know about that. They should not be protected from this. They should be exposed to that world. So that is how it is. And we have all these themes. I'm very happy that they have environmental themes about climate change, which children should know, and about nature. So there are lots of books like that, very interesting books. We have Rumble in the Jungle. I know there are lots of books that I can tell you about, which deal with conservation of forests, about treating creatures as, as belonging to the universe, and making children understand that we are nothing in the universe. We are smaller than small, and we are that minuscule. So it's because man wanted to project himself as the center of the universe and wanted to conquer nature that we are in this terrible situation we find ourselves in with climate change, and nature is striking back. So children being told that in a very nice way is nice. So I was telling you about the adult stories being told to children. Now you have adult themes being told to children, but the difference is these writers who handle these adult themes handle them in a very gentle way, handle them in an age appropriate way, handle them in such a way that the child can accept this, understand maybe, but they seem to have done it rather successfully.
Since you are a children's writer writing for not specifically any particular group of children, your books have been accepted all over India. You're a pan-Indian children's writer. You must have noticed that India has got a great tradition of telling stories, whether it is Ramayana, Mahabharata and all that. But of late, there has been a spike in telling stories where which are taken from myths, but they are being distorted. And many publishers believe that this is what children wants. And you have the childhood of heroes like Bhim and Khadolkaja, who I don't think that in the Mahabharata or Ramayana had a very decent childhood. So they are being brought back, they are given a chance to tell their own version and all that, but it's written with a propagandist perspective. So do you think that these things are selling in India, or what are the things that sells in children's fiction in India?
These things must be selling, otherwise why would publishers publish? See, you must remember that publishers publish to make money. All said and done. Books, after all, they are investing so much in your books. They would want returns. So they will only publish those books that they think will sell. At the same time, what they do is they say that they also publish books which will be instant bestsellers because they are catering to certain tastes which are the trends these days. And with the money that they make from that, they will also bring out some other books which are niche books, which are different kinds of books which may not make money. So there's a place for them. So the thing is that this is how it is, and mythology is really selling now. Everybody wants mythology. Mythology twisted, mythology turned, mythology redone, mythology distorted, mythology created. You name it, mythology is there everywhere. So you can't do anything about that. It was during Harry Potter, after Harry Potter's book came out, it was all fantasy. Fantasy, fantasy, fantasy. So I asked my editor, why is it? I'd gone for the Penguin sales conference. So there was children's literature. There was non-fiction, fiction, then children's literature. Everywhere it was mythology, mythology. My book alone was a humorous book. Otherwise, it was so much of mythology. And then she replied with just one sentence. She says, mythology sells. So that is how it is. You can't do anything about it. I mean, mythology is necessary, but I don't know whether this overdose is taking us anywhere. I hope children will read widely, because other books are also selling well. So it's not like mythology alone is selling. So children like variety. If a book is good, if it gives them what they want, if they are entertained, if it is written, if the approach is interesting, if there are interesting characters, if it is fun or if it is horror, whatever it is, if they enjoy it, see, at the end of the day, a book is to be enjoyed. So if they enjoy it, they will like it. Then they will recommend it to their peers. And it goes on like that. So I wouldn't say that mythology alone is selling, but mythology is selling a lot.
Now, coming to your books, your stories will never have malice. There is no violence except for Butterfingers falling down and breaking his bones. There are few accidents happening. There is something very nice about your stories. So, how do you write books which are telling a lot about very contemporary issues, very relevant topics, but in a very disguised manner? For instance, you talk about nature, you talk about the importance of how we have to survive in an Anthropocene era, but not by being preachy. It is not like telling them that you have to look at like this. So, are you very conscious that you should never be a preacher, only a teacher?
You make me sound like, not a preacher, but a teacher. No, I don't want to be a teacher either. I'm neither a preacher nor a teacher. I may have taught in a college. I used a lot of that experience in understanding children, because I taught in a college, but college students, she's also a student of mine, former student of mine. Now she's teaching in a college herself. So I call her my victim. She has her own share of victims now. So I learned from them. But otherwise, no, it's not that I'm doing it consciously, but this is my approach. See, my, if you can say, USP is humor. I have been writing humorous books. I always loved humor, because at home, a lot of humor was used. I was the youngest of 8 children. So to survive, I needed to use humor. I have to, if somebody, otherwise having 6 older sisters and a brother, 7 siblings, to sit on your head is enough to crush you. So you need to use humor to survive. Plus, I think in my house, naturally, humor was used. And I also, on top of that, liked humorous books. So I used to read also. I used to read widely from the time I was small. I went to school only in the 2nd standard. My education, I'm sorry, is incomplete. So we became readers. A house had books. Everybody used to read. And therefore, in my choice of books while reading around genres was humor. So all that made me bring humor into whatever I write. And basically, I'm very realistic. Even if I read, I'm not a great lover of horror and those kind of stories. And when you write what you like, what you enjoyed, and what you think you are good at. I don't know, ultimately it's the reader who has to decide, but you have the right to choose what you want to write about. So I have been writing about Butterfingers, I've been writing humorous stories, and I have a lot of concerns. The environment, it's of great concern to me. The creatures, the fact that climate change has come on us a little too quickly, that we are destroying the environment, that we are basically very selfish. So all these I want to couch in humor and present it to the children with an interesting story. So unfortunately, what could happen is, as Bernard Shaw said, he used to write stories. I mean, his plays always dealt with some specific theme, something that he was concerned about. He said, I write to make people laugh and then to make them think. Unfortunately, they stop with laughing. Sometimes I think that's what is happening. I wonder whether they understand that I am also trying to bring in many ideas, many viewpoints, many concerns through my stories. But I think they might. Like, I don't want, I have not specifically asked children, but they have been people who have asked me, how come there is no evil in your books? Not very obvious evil in my books. I think one of the reasons could be I love P.G. Wodehouse. I grew up reading P.G. Wodehouse. Even now I read P.G. Wodehouse. And there is no evil in his books. So it's not that indirect influence must be there. I'm not deliberately doing that, but somehow I don't want to, write those kind of stories. So it's mostly realistic.
See, to pick up one particular story that is in Couch Potato, you have the story that talks about the burger rivalry. You know,
The mango burger
the mango
rivalry,
burger rivalry. You know, you are talking about health issues. You're talking about environmental issues. You've been introducing a lot of things that is really commendable. You know, because
And about a matter of choice.
matter of choice. You know how choice is very important in a person's life.
How in India and maybe Kerala and maybe all over India, there are only two career options.
Yeah.
Medicine, engineering.
So that way,
Otherwise,
I think
yeah.
you are doing a great job by introducing all that without being preachy, which is actually a nice thing. Because last thing that students want is a preacher who goes and tells.
Last thing I wanted when I was reading also was that if I see a book which has in-your-face message, which is trying to, I know as soon as I read this book, start reading the book that there is a message, it is message-driven, I don't want to read it. So I just keep it aside. And maybe, it's a lot to do with how you grew up and what you liked and how you looked at the world around you. So all those reasons are there, and that's why I don't want very visible, obvious, in-your-face messages. Yeah.
Now, you're one writer who's actually started writing for children, then you have written for older children, then you have written for young adults. You've also written for very small children. The Kakaga is for very small children, recently published by DC. So you have written for all kinds of categories. So what do you consider is the writing process for all this? And or is it the same? Or do you have a switching mechanism by when you're writing for a child you have a particular mindset, when you're writing for a young adult you have another thing, and when you write for adult you're an entirely different person? Do you have something like that?
No, it's also to do with the story that you have, the theme, what you have decided upon. And of course, as you say, it's not a mindset as much as the approach, how you approach the story. When I know that the story is for an 8+ child, I actually don't mind bringing in bigger words, which I feel fit in the context, because a child will learn. But there are some things I don't want to introduce. Some life, some kind of incidents which may be a little adultish, which I wouldn't want to include. So that way I'm conscious of this. When it comes to young adult, I suppose you mean Butterfingers, right? Yeah, because Butterfingers is his age is 13. I have frozen him at age 13. I have not allowed him to grow up. There are now 8 books in the Butterfingers series, but Butterfingers remains in class 8A because I know that if he grows up, there will be other problems. And that is what, in fact, somebody said, young adult books have more sexual content than adult books. Because somehow people believe that young adult is coming of age, growing up, when they are getting to be aware of the other gender and so on. So those books are dealing with those issues. So my books, which may be for 10 plus and 10, 12, it will actually be for 10, 12, 13, all the way to 100 maybe. I mean, you can all enjoy them. But it is written in such a way that there isn't the kind of content you could find in a young adult book. But it is fun, and I have written sports-related stories because I enjoy sports. You must always write about what you know. I made this terrible mistake of writing a book story about karate because a friend said, I won't read your cricket books, but I will read your book, if you write on karate. And I thought, okay, I'll write on karate. And that became so traumatic, so terrible, watching all those Jackie Chan movies and Bruce Lee movies and weird sounds coming out of my room with a cow. And I learned all the rules just for a 70-page novella, which is the first story in the collection of Butterfinger stories. I think it is run as
But it was a
Butterfinger
very
again.
delightful story, we loved it.
Yeah,
Karate story.
because I worked so much on it. I work on my stories, but they will be around things that I already know, and I do deep research. Because sometimes even for one sentence, I will have to ensure that what I'm writing is correct, and I go to proper sources, not just anything in the internet. But this one, I didn't know anything. I have watched Enter the Dragon. That is all that I have done as far as karate is concerned. But the friend said there were no mistakes. So for me, that was enough. And I also learned a nice lesson. Yeah.
What you said about young adults is actually true. Recently, I went to a school and I asked the children, which is your favorite book? And I expected answers like Toto-chan, Alice in Wonderland and all. And in between, I heard Susan Collins. I also heard 50 Shades of Grey. And I pretended as if I have not heard this child. But the child was so adamant that I hear that. So he raised his hand and said, I watched the movie also, which is even worse.
What age was this child?
He is, I think, maybe 10 or
10.
12.
Okay.
So, which I think is not an age-appropriate movie or film or book, but he said that he was very proud of that. And the funniest part is that this was attended by some of the parents also, and the child's parent appeared so proud of the fact that the child is watching all this. Maybe the parent is not even aware of what 50 Shades of Grey is.
Yeah.
So
maybe, because they think that the child is grown up, the child's reading skills are so high. Parents are very proud of all that. They do not, maybe the parent doesn't even know what 50 Shades of Grey is all about. So that's the thing. If the parents were readers, this wouldn't happen.